yeah, so what? He did. He dressed in these clothes like, oh, do you like the swastika? I'm like, yeah, it's an aesthetically pleasing logo. You want me to like clutch my pearls over and over again?
Antisemitism, the fucking canard, blood libel. It's just shut the fuck up, dude. Holocaust, Hitler, it's just Nazi. It's just like, dude, shut up. I just hatred. He's like, no. We're gonna call it anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
You see him do that? He's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, we can't lose that word. It's very important to us,
Jew, and he's like, yeah, it's a slur. Well, it's not a slur, it's descriptive of who you are. He's a Jew and he's fat. This is not, you can't make this Nazi rhetoric.
Like, what even is that, dude? Like, what the fuck is that? Like, the C word, like, what are you talking about? Like, shut the fuck up. Like, dude.
Okay, so you've got Dan Bilzerian and Sneeko sitting down to talk cancel culture. And what starts as a conversation about society getting soft turns into an absolute dismantling of how certain groups weaponize victimhood to shut down any criticism. And look, I know exactly where this is going. The second Dan starts talking about double standards and how crimes get covered based on who the victim is. Because here's the thing, and you already know this. We're living in a world where you can't even point out obvious patterns without someone screaming anti-Semitism or trying to get you deplatformed. And what's wild is how transparent the grift has become. These guys are about to break down exactly how the game works, who benefits, and why the usual playbook of calling everyone a Nazi just doesn't work anymore. Watch how they expose the whole machine, the selective outrage, the hijacked terminology, the fake pearl clutching from people who literally fund wars that kill kids. This is going to make some people very uncomfortable. Let's get into it.
And this, a big part of it too is like this Jewish cancel culture where they have like, really intentionally do a victim category and try to like spin this narrative, not because they give a shit about blacks, but just to like also create a space for themselves too as victims, to where it's like if there's any black crime, it's like all of a sudden it's because of racism, and if anything happens to a Jew, it's because of anti-Semitism. But then if a white person gets killed and the guy's like, fuck that white girl, it's fine, and we just won't even prosecute him, we'll just let him out because he's not even smart enough to fucking stand trial, they say, right? So it's the double standard, it's the weaponization of victim categories. It's just, dude, it's just such fucking nonsense, bro. And it's so obvious once you see it. And I think people are just getting tired of it. So
I think you've marked a shift where that cancel culture just has no strength anymore. It used to be so easy to label everybody Nazi, anti-Semite, the same. I just did New York Post and they did the same thing. They said, oh, you said Hitler had aura. I'm like, yeah, so what? He did. He dressed in these clothes like, oh, do you like the swastika? I'm like, yeah, it's an aesthetically pleasing logo. You want me to like clutch my pearls over and over again? There's a war going on. We had enough of this. And so I think that's why your movement and, you're running for Congress will be successful. People had enough and are starting to see through these lies of cancel culture.
Hold on. I'm going to turn on my notifications on silent here. Sorry. Let's see. Okay. There we go. People are tired of it, dude. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. Antisemitism, the fucking canard, blood libel. It's just shut the fuck up, dude. Holocaust, Hitler, it's just Nazi. It's just like, dude, shut up. Everybody's so tired of it. But I let them go, I didn't want to like really kind of roast them because I wanted them to expose themselves, which is exactly what they did. And I also wanted to like really deconstruct that anti-Semitism word, not because for them, but for their audience. So the audience can hear it and realize how ridiculous that word is, that they just completely hijacked and weaponized. That word should be talking about the Palestinians. Right. That word should be referring to the Arabs. But somehow within the last 100 years, they took that word and just forced it to only be used about Jews. And that's why the, Harvey or whatever the fuck his name is, when the other host was like, okay, well, we'll call it Jew hatred. He's like, no, we're going to call it anti-Semitism. Yeah. You see him do that? He's like, no. Like, we can't lose that word. It's very important to us, So it was just, I don't know. I think it exposed them a bit. I also think the comments were very telling, it's like, because their platform is relatively mainstream, if not more liberal skewed, I would say. And so, yeah, I mean, to your point, it's like, what are we going to get mad about a word when, you know, we've got pedophiles literally fucking children and like we're paying for bombs to blow up children's schools? Like killing and kids to me should be the moral focus, not a fucking word, not racism. It's just like,
Dude, okay, so here's what's actually happening here. And this is the part that nobody in mainstream media wants to touch. Dan just walked into a legacy media interview, New York Post, and instead of playing defense when they tried to bait him with, oh, you said Hitler had aura, he just didn't flinch. He said, yeah, aesthetically, the guy knew how to present. And that completely broke their script. Because the whole game, and you guys know this game, is to make you scramble, make you apologize, make you beg for forgiveness so they can either reject it or hold it over you forever. But when you just refuse to play, when you say, yeah, and what? The entire machine short circuits. And I love that Sneeko immediately clocks why this matters. Cancel culture used to have teeth. It used to end careers. Now, people are so exhausted by the constant weaponization of these words that they've lost all meaning. And here's where it gets really revealing. Dan talks about how he wanted them to expose themselves. He let them keep going with the antisemitism accusations because he knew their audience would hear how absurd it sounds. Like, think about this for a second. The word antisemitism, which etymologically refers to Semitic people, which includes Arabs and Palestinians, has been completely monopolized to only mean anti-Jewish. That's not an accident, dude. That's a deliberate linguistic power play. And you see it play out in real time when Dan brings up that TMZ or whoever interview where the host tries to say, okay, we'll call it Jew hatred. And the other guy immediately cuts him off like, no, we're calling it anti-Semitism. Because they can't lose that word. It's too valuable. It's a weapon that shuts down entire conversations about foreign policy, about lobbying influence, about anything they don't want you examining too closely. Follow the money on this, man. Who benefits from making certain criticisms completely off limits? Who benefits from creating a two-tier system where some groups can be criticized endlessly and others are completely insulated? It's not complicated. And the fact that Dan can sit there and calmly deconstruct this on a platform that would have deplatformed him 2 years ago for the same words tells you everything about how the culture is shifting. People are tired, dude. They're tired of being told that noticing patterns is bigotry. They're tired of watching their governments fund wars that kill children, while those same governments lecture them about the moral weight of words. The priorities are completely inverted, and guys like Dan and Sneeko are just saying what millions of people are already thinking. Let me know in the comments. Do you think the cancel culture playbook still works, or is it finally dead?
Not racism. It's just like, shut the fuck up about all that nonsense. If you want to talk about racism, the real racism is the anti-white, which is coming from the Jewish community, which is why, you know, what happens if anytime something happens to a black person and you call it racism, anytime something happens to a Jew, you call it anti-Semitism, but then anytime something happens to a white person, you just ignore it, right? Like, who is that actually attacking? If you look at like what the overall end game is here, it's to attack white people. And, you know, and they've done it. They've done it in their tweets. They did it very like outwardly too, like talking about like kill a white person on the way to work today. They had anti-white training at Coke. You know, the DEI is literally like an attack on white people because it only benefits everybody but white people. And and I think people are kind of getting wise to that. And they're understanding like white people are not the fucking problem that these Jews tried to make them out to be. The funny thing is all the things that they accuse white people of is what Jews are actually doing and what Jewish supremacy actually is. So the beauty of the Jewish supremacy word is it basically just repackages all the bullshit that they told you about white supremacy and appropriately labels it to the group that it belongs.
Mm-hmm. Randy Fine is definitely doing it about Muslims. He's been saying, you know, dogs are greater than Muslims. He's been saying like Muslims are terrorists, and this is just a nonsense. This is from a sitting congressman. It's like if he had that rhetoric about Jews or about, you know, any other group about Christians, he would be banned from everything. He would not be allowed in DC. So it's cool to see some sort of pushback. And also, you could also understand that they fall back on the victim mentality all the time. The first thing that they ask him when Randy Fine goes on TMZ, they're like, oh, he called you a fat Jew. And he's like, yeah, it's a slur. Well, it's not a slur. It's descriptive of who you are. He's a Jew and he's fat. This is not, you can't make this Nazi rhetoric as well.
Yeah, I mean, but I like them to just keep on going with it because it really exposes it. And it's like, okay, if Jew was the same as, then you wouldn't only bleep out one word, right? Like, just stop with this like nonsense. You know what I mean? Like, literally, this is your fucking network. This is your TV show. So you are going to only bleep out one word, yet say they're the same, try and compare the two, and then make this out to be like, oh, you know, Dan is using racist words when you're the one that brought this fucking shit up. You know, like, are we fucking 6 years old? The N word? Like, what even is that, dude? Like, what the fuck is that? Like, the C word, you know, like, what are you talking about? Like, shut the fuck up. Like, dude, honestly.
All right, so let's be very clear about what just happened here. Dan Bilzerian and Sneeko just spent 6 minutes systematically dismantling the entire infrastructure of selective outrage and weaponized victimhood. And they did it without flinching, without apologizing, and without pretending that the emperor has clothes. And here's the thing, whether you agree with everything they said or not, you cannot deny that they exposed a very real double standard. When Dan points out that crimes against certain groups get labeled as hate crimes, while crimes against others get memory hold, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's observable reality. When he brings up that you can openly tweet, kill a white person on the way to work, or run corporate DEI training that explicitly targets white employees, and it's either ignored or celebrated, while any criticism of certain other groups gets you banned from the internet, that's not imagined, that's documented. And the Randy Fine example is perfect. You've got a sitting congressman saying dogs are greater than Muslims and calling them terrorists on loop, and it barely makes the news. But imagine, just imagine for 1 second, if someone said that about any other religious group. They'd be expelled from Congress by the end of the week. The fact that there's such an obvious hierarchy of who you're allowed to criticize and who you're not should bother everyone, regardless of where you sit politically. Now, here's what I respect about how Dan handled this. He let them expose themselves. He didn't shut down the conversation. He didn't try to no-platform anyone. He sat there and let them deploy their entire playbook. The Nazi accusations, the antisemitism claims, the moral outrage, and then calmly pointed out the contradictions. That's how you win these arguments. Not by screaming louder, but by letting the other side reveal how hollow their rhetoric actually is. And Sneeko's right when he says the comments on these videos are telling. Even on liberal-leaning platforms, people are starting to push back on this stuff because the hypocrisy has become too glaring. You can't fund bombs that blow up schools and then lecture people about the moral weight of words. You can't create legal frameworks that explicitly disadvantage one racial group and then claim you're fighting racism. People aren't stupid. They see it. So final verdict? Dan and Sneeko absolutely dominated this conversation. They didn't just make their points, they exposed the entire game. And the fact that this conversation can even happen publicly now, when it would have gotten you banned from everything 2 years ago, tells you the culture is shifting. The old gatekeepers are losing control of the narrative, and they know it. That's why they're panicking. That's why the rhetoric is getting more desperate. Whether you think they went too far or not far enough, one thing's for sure. They're saying what a lot of people are thinking but are too afraid to say. And that's always been the role of people willing to take the heat. If you made it this far, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to see it, and drop a comment letting me know what you thought about this. Do you think Dan's right about the double standards, or do you think this is overblown? I want to hear from you. That's what we do here at MB. We watch the stuff that makes people uncomfortable, and we talk about it honestly. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.